Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Joining me today is Abhijit Iyer-Mitra I I. That's how they call him in Tamil. Let's welcome Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Abhijit, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Vetrivel, and thanks for having me on as usual.
And Vetrivel, Veeravel, welcome to you. See how many V's are there? And now, Abhijit, you tweeted out saying that the meeting of 4 NSAs is a huge deal. Why is it huge? And in that, I noticed that if you're talking about I2U2, right? One of the people are missing. I see there. I mean, Israel wasn't there in that.
Yeah. So Israel wasn't there in that because of the country that it was held in. Okay. It will obviously get in there, but it obviously means there is some new grouping forming, which means you have one more angle of leverage, one more angle of intelligence sharing, even if nothing materializes. And with Indian government treaties, nothing ever really materializes. But the very fact that you have one more instrument of leverage or seduction on the Americans makes it very interesting.
Well. Let's also look at the long-term implications. I mean, of these, many don't even have a proper army, navy, air force. I can't even say if they have all three branches of defense. So far, thus far, US has been like the big brother taking care of interests. But we see a genuine attempt on part of US to retreat, like what happened in Afghanistan. Are these countries afraid now that somebody else needs to step in for them, and that if somebody doesn't step in, it might be China or Russia? Hi? You're muted, my friend. You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, what this was you remember Iran and Saudi Arabia had a deal brokered by the Chinese.
Yes.
So here what is being done is the Saudis are now allowing the Americans back in as a favor to them. The Americans would have had to grovel with the Saudis. Okay. And here what is happening is India joining this is part of a signal being sent to the Americans saying, look, we're just as pissed off with you and we're kind of with our Saudi and Emirati brothers on this. It's not an open signal, but it's a very similar signal. Especially given the kind of crap the US Embassy in India has been tweeting of late.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Just today, they promoted a woman teaching Indians how to fact check, as if Indians don't know how to fact check. Okay. And from an institute, IFCN and Pointer, that was responsible for validating the worst kind of COVID misinformation during COVID that was put out by the American state.
Go ahead. Finish it, please.
So it's kind of becoming a joke. I don't think the Americans realize what they're doing. Maybe Jake Sullivan got it, maybe Jake Sullivan didn't. But the point is that the four of us meeting was a big deal. It could be the beginning of something big. But even the fact that it just happened without anything, with the kind of alignments likely to have happened out there, the way Saudi Arabia and India behave with each other today, which is very brotherly love and all of that, is quite significant. But it's not a back thing. It's more a case of you translate the nuance of this. America ke piche podranga.
Well. America is being given arms. That's what Abhijit feels. That is, of course, his opinion. And viewers, after this program, in about half an hour's break, we'll have Elmer Yuan weighing in on the latest situation in China, especially its GDP numbers, which somebody has done calculations in various ways to come up with a number that's going to shock you. So do tune in for that one. But most importantly, like this video. It's important that you like this video because we have a lot of interesting information that others don't put. Also, Abhijit, if you notice, the Department of State also has been playing some, mischief, in the sense every time there is a censor of India, they'll bring an Indian American spokesperson. I've never heard these people before. They'll come but the Indian name is very prominent there. They come in and then they make a statement critical of it. It also shows that the newer generation, the second generation Indian American, is very woke. They need to have their attitude adjusted. That's a problem that is being addressed on its own. But did you notice that?
Look, I have very little faith in the second generation of Indian Americans, right? There's maybe one or two smart ones like, Sagar Enjeti or Rav Arora or people like that. But for every Sagar Enjeti or Rav Arora, there's 100,000 idiots coming out of there. And this always happens. The second generation always take up the worst. The first generation are the best, the second generation are the worst. You look in Turks in Germany, it's the reverse. The first generation wanted to integrate, the second generation actually looked back to Turkey and the worst of Turkey as their glory. With Indians in America, it's the reverse, but like I said, the second generation are always the rotters. The first generation wanted to integrate, be good, and just keep quiet and lay low. The second generation go out of their head because their integration depends on shitting on their country. So that's that.
So somebody has tried to wait, don't keep changing it, please. Okay. That's the way your name is pronounced in Bengali. All right. MiGs keep crashing. You had one today also. 2 people died.
The question that was asked, Apisitu, is how you spell it. It is the way it is transliterated. My name is transliterated in Tamil. You can't write Abhijit in Tamil. So it has to be Apisitu.
Well, viewers, this is one of those great ideas of the Dravida culture. The DMK and the ADMK, both I hold them responsible. You know what they did? They took out some letters from the Tamil alphabet, saying that these are all from Sanskrit. And Ja, the letter for Ja, they took it out. So Jit, G becomes Sa, Sat, Sit. So that is how this has become so mangled. Lumpens of the lowest order. Anyway, next, let's take a look at what's happening with MiGs. Shouldn't India be phasing them out by now?
Yeah, we should have long back. We haven't. Ab kya karenge? We phased out the MiG-23s and 7s, which came much later before the MiG-21s. Why? This is all because of, the Air Force sitting and wrecking its own plans. The Rafale procurement was meant to be a light fighter replacement for the MiG-21. Instead, they mangled it and got another aircraft, which was kind of lesser capability than the Sukhoi 30. Why? Because the Sukhoi 30 had failed and they wanted to cover that up. Okay, which is why you still use the Mirage in Balakot and not the Sukhoi in Balakot. Even though the Sukhoi is meant to have a 3,000 kilometer range, came 20 years after the Mirage, etc. Well, 10, 15 years after the Mirage and things like that. That was that. So, it's failure compensation for which nobody will ever be held responsible. The higher echelons will never be held responsible. It will be put down to technical fault or this and that or lower level. The actual people who, sabotaged the entire modernization of the light part of the fleet will never be held accountable for this.
Well. That's all for...
Decided on the Sukhoi and agreed to continue with the contract despite repeat failures and catastrophic failures of the entire Sukhoi working system.
Abhijit, while we are on Balakot, let's last one question before we take on the regular Q&A. I heard that 10 planes flew over Balakot and only 4 engaged. The other 6, some malfunction happened. Is it true?
Yeah, well, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but several of them had malfunctions and the backup planes had to be used.
Okay, let's take some questions now, please. Akshit Chandok. Thank you, Akshit. India gets no credit or praise for being a free democracy. So what is the point of being a democracy? She and Erdogan are tyrants who crush all opposition, yet the West doesn't care while it bashes India constantly.
Praise for we. We are not a democracy to satisfy other people. We're a democracy, Akshit, to satisfy ourselves. Okay, the rest of the world can go take a collective hike. Okay, we don't do what we do to suck up to the West. If the West doesn't like what we do, they are free to go shove it up their unwashed, toilet papered, you know what.
Bidets are becoming quite popular these days, you know.
Who
Bidets.
are they?
Bidets. Yes.
Bidets are disgusting because it falls back from where it comes out. It's
Come
absolutely
on
disgusting.
now.
It'll be much
Next
better
question,
if
please.
they it'll be much better if they use health faucets like we do in India, but they can't even do that. Even though it's
Next.
more eco-friendly than toilet paper, huh? Basically, the white man will wash every part of his body except the rectum. There's a new thing called sunning the rectum trend that has started off. Even the sun can touch the rectum, but water should not touch the rectum. I have never seen a collectively filthier race than this. I hope when you get people from that race into your living rooms, I hope you sterilize your sofas. See if it's rexine or leather, it's easier to sterilize. But if you have a fabric sofa, I am not coming and sitting in your house.
You know, you've become the modern day version of Kushwant Singh. You know, he used to have an article line by line in Indian Express or Illustrated Weekly to malice towards one and all.
Yes, I remember. It was fantastic.
Next one, please. Himank 957 wants to know the Airbus A321 XLR is a revolutionary aircraft. In future, do you think long range narrow body aircraft will replace a wide body segment?
It's not revolutionary, it's evolutionary. Remember, there were a few aircraft. It's taken the range now to become a transatlantic flight. Okay, so it opens up lots of B and C airports to each other. So, for example, you can now fly from I can't do the range charts right now, but if you look at the range charts, which also depend on load and everything, you will be able to fly from, say, Birmingham to um, Buffalo, New York. Okay, whereas before, if you lived in Birmingham and had to go to Buffalo, you would have to go from Birmingham to London, switch airports, or if you were lucky and you'd get to Heathrow, then go from there to New York, then from there take a train and go to Buffalo. Okay, so it's opened up connectivity in a way, but it's been a slow, gradual process that's been happening for a long time. Remember the A220, which was the Bombardier what 300 series was it? No, Bombardier 100 slash 300 or whatever it was before. I forget now. See something it was. Those were also revolutionary because they brought intercontinental range to regional jets. Whereas, the Airbus has been used in kind of intercontinental routes for a while. So it's not all that revolutionary, it's evolutionary. But it will open up a lot for the transatlantic market because it is that particular range driven. You can also do London to, you can do Paris to Delhi, I think. Paris to Delhi and Rome to Delhi, you can do. I still don't know if you can do London to Delhi on that range. But yes, that is what is going to happen. It will open up a huge market for the narrow body segment. Uh, and then what ends up happening is that you will actually have much better connectivity. Okay, you won't have to go from, like I said, you can go from Chandigarh to Rome instead of going from Chandigarh to Delhi or Chandigarh to Bombay to Rome or Chandigarh to Dubai to Rome. Okay, it will make more sense. It makes the economics more sensible. The only downside is for people who fly on long range. On domestic, I only fly economy. It doesn't make sense under 3 hours to fly business. you're not going to get a very good business class product in narrow body, which is very shocking for me. I might have to fly with you peasants.
Next question, please. Himank 957 again. Why was the Mirage 2000 used in Balakot instead of Su-30? I think you answered this question just now. How do Chinese destroyers
I,
Type 55?
well, I haven't, but I've answered this 3-4 times before on the same podcast.
Yeah. Go to the second question, Abhijit. How do Chinese destroyers Type 55, Type 52D fare against US Arleigh Burke?
Arleigh Burke. Uh, they have the same or more vertical launch tubes, but in terms of electronic sophistication, they're nowhere near the Arleigh Burke. Okay. Remember, the Chinese love imitating the external appearance of Western technology, but they're almost never as good as Western technology. Okay. So that's basically what it is. The Chinese missiles can be outranged, jammed, what have you, by the West. And don't go by Ukraine. There's a lot to learn from Ukraine. I'm working on an academic paper on that. So I'll, when it's up, I'll send it to you guys, because this is one of the important lessons for us to learn anyway from this. Next.
Aditya B wants to know, during successful winter campaigns of Mongols against the Russians, how big of a role did tactics play compared to them being already adapted by the steppe winter by their origin?
A mix. It was origins, it was tactics, it was supply chains, huge amount of supply chains. They had a much higher number of horses than the Russians did. They had much deeper supply chains because remember, by the time they went into Russia, they were already one of the biggest empires on earth, possibly the biggest by then. Right? So the amount of resources at that point they could marshal against what were essentially small little city states. Each city state was independent, right? Novgorod, Kiev, uh, 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 what were the other ones? Uh, Whatever they were. They were all small states. Moscow, Pereyaslav, uh, they were all small city states. Maybe some of them were slightly bigger, they'd become grand duchies by this point, but they were up against the collective might of the resources of Central Asia, which was already very rich by then and very resourceful by then, plus China, plus Persia, plus a whole load of other things along the way, right? So it was essentially, it was like America going up against Liechtenstein.
Next question, please. Aditya again, how is it possible that many of the earliest religions had a far more sophisticated conception of God than did far later ancient civilizations such as Egypt and Greece?
Aditya, I did not get that. When you say, tell me which ones you're talking about. Because the
I,
Egyptian and Greek concept of God uh, was extremely unsophisticated, in my view. Egypt's and Greece were both Bronze Age religious formulations which never really developed a theology. And I don't know what earliest religions you're talking about, but none of them developed a theology, except Hinduism. None of them developed a theology in the Bronze Age. Huh? You see that development of sophistication of thought in the Iron Age, but uh, uh, Hinduism kind of developed it in the Bronze Age. But I have not come across any other religion. I think Egyptian and Greek religions were equally uh, crude and unsophisticated as all other Bronze Age religions were relative.
Ashik Chandok, thank you, Akshit. UK thinks India does everything with their so called aid, be it purchasing oil from Russia or buying weapons.
They
Why are
don't.
they so arrogant,
They
racist,
don't.
especially towards
They
non
don't. Next.
whites?
And they don't. Next.
Vamsi wants to know, did Assad use chemical weapons? Is there any proof? And also, please do a podcast with Kushal on Syrian conflict.
Look, there's proof that both sides used chemical weapons very significantly. Uh, that big attack that happened, was it in Shura or in Duma? I forget which one of the big attacks. Was almost certainly a government attack simply because of the scale. At that point of time, there was no rebel grouping that had the kind of resources to bring together so many chemical canisters and use them in such large scale at that point of time. Of course, now even those findings have been dismissed. Uh, but yes, there is proof that Assad did use. In private, also, they will sometimes admit to using them. The point is, they're not being used now. But yes, he did. But before he did, it was being very regularly used by the rebels in the north, just not at the scale at which those Damascus attacks happened.
Next question, please. Vamsi again, what will be the verdict on same-sex marriage? And of some are saying government privately supports, and what BJP is saying about this?
I suspect Chandrachud is going to write a minority opinion saying it should be legalized, but the other judges are going to side with the government. They've basically all agreed to it, that this is a legislative matter, it is not a judicial matter. It will go to the government, and the government will use this to introduce uniform civil code and bring in some kind of civil union for gay couples, which will give them inheritance and child protection rights.
Next question, please. Om Patel wants to know, with the USA being energy independent, do you think future conflicts in the Middle East will invite US intervention even though it doesn't affect them and most of it goes to Asia anyway?
But US has been energy independent for quite some time, Om. Most of America's oil has come from
Post,
America.
I think towards the end of Obama era, 2014 or 15, when shale became so prevalent that they
Yeah,
became a net exporter.
yeah, but it's generally California is the only one that's really been dependent on external oil because of the Sierra Nevada mountain range kind of thing. But it doesn't. There's still going to be. It's no more or no less, because remember, America's energy interference has been based on Pax Americana, an American peace for the whole world, not just for itself, but based on America's hegemony controlling where that energy flows. So, US intervention on energy matters is going to be the same, no more, no less, because it's always been predicated on the rest of the world and less, not that much on America.
Next question, please. Om Patel again. What are your thoughts about my home state of Gujarat? What are the things you like about it and hate about it?
I love how much culture it has, textiles, architecture, and all of that, which they do a very bad job of advertising. It has fantastic food. Don't hear all the stories and jokes you hear about, the uh, that people can't tell the difference between the first course and the dessert course, etc., etc. What I don't like about it is this. Garbha dance and how loud they are. I mean, they can't go in a group abroad and ever stay quiet. Na? They're always screeching all the time. I mean, what is it with volume? Like volume modulation नहीं होता है क्या? इधर भी मेरी सब गुजराती आंटियां सब आके चिल्लाते रहती है हमेशा. चिल्लाना काय का है रे? प्यार से प्यार में भी चिल्लाते हैं. I don't know why. All conversations happen very loud, almost like Punjabis. Number one. Number two, what is this Garba dance? At least do different steps, no? How can you just keep doing the same steps over and over and over again interminably? कुछ नए steps invent करो. But yeah, I think those are the only issues. And oh yeah, the other things. Please, all Guju uncles, please stop opening your shirt all the way till your belly button and wearing those horrible amounts of gold on your neck. It looks disgusting. And your chest doesn't look very nice. Thank you.
Sachin wants to know, is PPP a good measure of value in different countries? Purchasing power parity.
I know. Look, I'm very mixed about it. I always prefer nominal GDP over PPP as a rule.
And why is that?
Uh, because I think PPP gives you a very uh, wrong impression of the standard of living in countries that I have been to. I think, in a way, uh, nominal GDP has been a much better realistic representation of prosperity or the lack of that you see on the streets than you do on Wikipedia lists.
Next question, please. Maximilian, your views on likely Indian purchase of 90 Rafale and G2G deal with assemble in India option. Thanks.
Boss, see, this is, I told you, remember, long back. Uh, if you wanted to buy this many, you should have bought it all at once so that you would have created economies of scale. This just reeks of terrible policy making where you buy bit by bit by bit. You do not get the technology, you do not create economies of scale, you create deadly squad. And I'm sorry, assemble in India is just jobs for the boys. There is no real value addition happening out here.
Next question, please. Mr. Lee wants to know if bisexual slash polyamorous triplets, quads, etc. want to get married, how can the government give them marriage right without legalizing polygamy? In California, was a case of a kid with 3 legal dads.
In India, you just can't legalize polygamy or polyandry or polyamory. So polygamy is where a husband has more than one
One
wife.
wife.
Uh, Polyandry is where a wife has more than one husband. Polyamory is many husbands and many wives in a relationship. There has to be a bisexual angle to it in order to be polyamorous. So what happens here is you have, in the process of giving a micro minority a right, you will be dispossessing the rights of a huge majority in India by allowing poly anything. Because at that point, whoever the more vulnerable person in the thing is, in the relationship is, will be manipulated for more, which is what used to happen with, the Muslims can take more than one wife law. What used to happen was the consent was required. Usually consent was given, but there were many, many cases, including some of my friends, where the consent was not given. And they would be beaten black and blue till consent was given. And sometimes they'd even die when consent wasn't given from the beatings. Okay. So you can't do it because remember, we are a pre-industrial society. Women haven't achieved complete equality with men because we are still not a fully industrialized and therefore obliviating the physical weakness of a woman versus the physical strength of a man, the relative physical weakness of a woman versus the relative physical strength of a man. So any move towards poly anything will be a significant and grave violation of women's rights, and that it cannot happen. It is a very different reality in a first world country like America or Europe, and very different here because the issues involving gay marriage are very different as long as it's just two people involved. And the poly marriage thing is a totally different set of issues.
Ishan Sharma wants to know, Abhijit, what is your take on Rahul Gandhi visiting Delhi University area and interacting with students who are either part of Delhi University or are preparing for civil services? What can be the politics behind this? क्या हुआ? कैसे हुआ? कब हुआ? क्यों हुआ?
Doesn't seem to know what votes he's trying to get. Have you ever heard of Zomato and Swiggy being a big vote base? But he
No?
wants to be seen with Zomato and Swiggy drivers in Karnataka. Then he went to see rig workers. Have you ever seen a rig worker voter base? Oil rig
Rig
worker.
worker? Where?
Oil,
Which?
oil rigs in Karnataka. He's gone and
Hmm.
met with oil rig workers. He doesn't get India, boss. So he's gone. Have you ever heard of a civil services voting block? No. पता नहीं क्या करते रहता है, पागल है.
Guts, the black sportsman, wants to know, Abhijit, what do you think of the perception of a lot of Sikhs have that only community that made the lion's share of sacrifice and contributions towards India? They
See,
are
I
the
think
only community. Yeah.
no. Every community has an exceptional view of itself in its contributions to India. Okay, so they have their own view of their outsized contributions, just as Shri and I have an outsized view of our contributions. We think Tamils have contributed more to India intellectually. A nuclear bomb किसने बनाया? Missile किसने बनाया? He is not Indian missile, he is Madrasi missile. He is not Indian nuclear bomb, he is Madrasi nuclear bomb. सब मद्रासी ने बनाया. चिदम्बरम, अब्दुल कलाम, सब मद्रासी. So is our contribution to India? Everybody contributes equally to India. Okay, nobody contributes more, nobody contributes less. And obviously, when you decide to go around saying that you contribute more, you will be taken down very, very brutally, as you should.
Guys, it's our mother. It's not one person's mother. So everybody wants to do the best for his or her mother.
No. So
Malyaban,
it's like different kids in the family. Okay, there'll
yes,
be one. Imagine a mother has 3 sons or daughters, whatever. One will be in America sending back money. One will be in India looking after her in her infirmity, with whom the mother will be staying and dealing with all the tantrums of old age. The third will be the one, doing all the outside ka work for the mother. Each one will have fights when it comes to the property, saying, oh, I sent the money, or oh, I did all the work, or oh, I did all the outside work. I mean, how often do you see this? This happens a lot in India, boss.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
exactly like that. Typical Indians being Indians, boss.
yeah. Go back one question. We missed the last one, please. Maliban question one. We missed that one. Something about Vietnam. Yeah. I have seen South Korea, Japan, Vietnam have one of the highest HDI of Southeast Asia. What
Okay?
policies did they enact that India could not?
Vietnam does not. South Korea and Japan are way, way, way ahead of Vietnam. South Korea and Japan don't even come in Southeast Asia. They are counted as East Asia. They are not in part of any Southeast Asian grouping, boss. Maliban, you've got it very, very wrong here. Please, I think you were trying to ask something else. Ask it differently.
Next question, please. Maliban question two. Does China, Pakistan possess similar kind of thermobaric, I don't know, and incendiary weapons akin to the ones Russia using against Ukraine? Can Pak or China use them against India?
Everybody seems to think the thermobaric is some great technology. But the original thermobaric was napalm, and then it moved on to fuel air, which is it's very rudimentary, easy technology to master. It's just very uh, 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 temperamental to store over long periods of time. Okay, because it's a very volatile substance. Okay, so it's not such, it's not rocket science. A lot of countries can do it, including India. I know several manufacturers, I'm not going to tell you on the podcast or ever really, who have the basic capacity for manufacturing thermobaric right here, almost in a civilian setting. So it's no big deal. I don't know why you think it's a big deal.
Ashish Sharma wants to know, I think in the coming decades, Europe will experience a demographic imbalance like India. What do you think the citizens would do then? Who will champion the human rights then?
Well, uh, it's a different demographic problem, which is an inverted pyramid, for which they thought immigration was the solution, and it turned out to be horribly, horribly wrong. So that was that. And who will champion human rights then? Nobody, boss. But there's no champion of human rights even now. You look at the path that Europe is going down. There's all kinds of thought and speech crimes that are being enacted without anybody paying attention to it in Europe right now. It's white Christian Europe doing it. It will only accelerate the trend when, I don't know what demographics you're talking about, but it's just going to be an accelerating trend.
Next question, please. Bhartin Bharatam. What's your opinion on Zaha Hadid's oven who is building? Just read it, man. I don't know.
Uh, Look, she's like every other architect. Some of her buildings are really, really good, and some of her buildings are, uh, well, they're just really, really, really bad. I don't have much of an opinion of. Shall I show you the Haven Huis so you can look?
Yeah.
Uh, 1 second. Let me do screen share. Share screen. Okay. Can you guys see?
Oh, wow.
Can you see?
What is
Yes.
that boulder sitting on top of a building?
They needed to extend it, boss. This is an older building part here. Okay. So
Uh,
she designed this part to come up on top of it. The thing is, I mean, the reason I don't have an opinion on it is because I don't have a very good opinion of this. But then I don't have a very good opinion of this either. Just because it's an old building doesn't mean it's very pretty.
there's a
Right?
cantilever there. Is there a cantilever? Just one
Yeah,
side
it is
only supporting?
kind of a cantilever. Yeah, it is. There's actually a pillar going like this,
Yeah.
which because it creates an optical illusion that you've actually done this and this, but there's a pillar there. It's not such a great technical achievement. Huh? I mean, it's not a technical miracle or anything. It just, you think it looks like that. But let's look at some of Zaha Hadid's designs and we can talk about them. The buildings. Um, right. So, again, what do you think of this?
Uh, Interesting. Sand dunes?
Yeah, it's meant to be. A lot of her things were inspired because she was Iraqi originally.
Okay.
A
Hmm.
lot of it was inspired by dunes and waves. See, this is very nice.
Yeah,
They're
that I
very,
like. That I
yeah.
like. Yeah.
So even see, even this is like this. This is a lovely design, right? And that's why she was called the queen of the curve, because it was all meant to be wavy forms. She did not like straight lines, and I really like it. I mean, it's not. I've never liked to work. I've been inside Zaha Hadid buildings. They're lovely to look at from the outside. They're lovely to look at in terms of the inside, but they're not exactly the most space efficient buildings. But they're not meant to be space efficient buildings. They're meant to be a building that inspires you in an artistic setting. Okay, so that's what it is. So I actually like Zaha Hadid, but I don't believe that they're. Uh, uh, I don't think Zaha Hadid, for example, should design an airport. She should design what she always did, which was show space buildings.
What was the intended use of the Havenhois building? Sorry, let's stay there. 1 second. What was
It
the
is some
intended use?
port authority or something, if I'm not mistaken.
I see. I see. I see.
There's
Yeah,
another.
you have too many curves. You are wasting a lot of space. People
Yeah, you
will
are.
work with
But
odd
see,
sort
not
curves.
everything is about space efficiency, right?
Hmm.
A lot of it is about just design.
Hmm. Next question, please. Sambhav Jain wants to know, I understand the obsession of moving abroad in Punjab youth due to a lack of opportunity, but the next biggest student exporter is Gujarat, which has much better economic indicators. Why is that?
A lot of Punjab is uh, the amount of immigration fraud that happens in Punjab is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. We saw that
A lot of people are yeah,
Simranjit Maan was giving for 30,000 to 70,000 rupees a certificate saying this guy is being discriminated. Didn't matter.
yeah. So a lot of Punjabi immigration is family immigration, saying discriminated against, ye mera rishtedar hai, bring him over, etc., etc. And Gujarat is actually going abroad for studies. Surprisingly, Andhra is also a lot of going abroad for studies, but Andhra has, I think, the second or third highest rate of frauds and fake
Yes,
education
yes,
to abroads
true, true,
after
true.
Punjab, I think.
Next question, please. Francis wants to know, how did Turkey manage to develop their fifth generation fighter, the TFX, and their autonomous drone, the Loyal Wingman, in such a short time? And is it better than F-22, F-35? Is it because of NATO help?
No, it's nowhere near as good as F-22. Leave aside the F-35, it's not even as good as the F-22. Please remember, um, it's very easy to label something fifth generation, but to actually be fifth generation is a completely different ballgame. Okay. People tend to get carried away by external surfaces. Just because something has stealth does not make it total fifth generation. There are lots of issues in the TFX fighter, that just like there are in the Korean fighter. So, for example, the Korean fighter, there's apparently been a lot of technology sharing between from Korea to Turkey, not the other way around, which is again hand me down technology from the Americans. The Korean fighter doesn't do internal weapons carriage, it does semi recessed weapons carriage. So, it's never going to be a stealth. Okay, so there's lots of issues with it. But that said, they are way ahead of India. Why? Because they thought about their industry very, very carefully and developed it very systematically. Unlike that question that came before. First by 36 Rafales, then by 72 for the Navy, then by 90 more for the Air Force. All kinds of bullshit.
Impact F wants to know, which was the metal that was overly bought by the British people while East India Company was ruling India? Metal.
What am I,
No.
Wikipedia? You can't Google.
Yeah, go look at it. Impact. Srinivas MS wants to know, Namaskaram to both of you. Is it possible to reverse foreign policy gains in the last few years by a future incompetent government?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, uh, but will it be done? I doubt that very much. Because remember, the BJP's foreign policy hasn't changed one bit since non alignment. We're still extremely non aligned. We're still extremely reverential to Saudis. What changed is on that side, that MBS actually reciprocated.
Hey, one
But
question for you
one
on
second, let
this.
me
Yeah,
finish.
go
Let
ahead.
me
Go ahead.
finish my thought, please. So we never changed our policy to Saudi Arabia. Even before MBS, we were like bending over backwards to make them happy. Atal Bihari Vajpayee went out of his way. He used to pretend that insults from the Saudis never happened. We always had a very good relationship with the Emiratis, who had always been trying to change Saudi policy without any success till they succeeded with MBS. So there has been no change in foreign policy at all, in fact. I'm quite surprised, Srinivas, that you think there has been a change, because there's been exactly zero change in India's foreign policy. I think the only difference is the openness with which they engage with Israel, though the Congress also had very robust engagement with Israel in private. And they used to tell the Israelis, boss, hamara Muslim vote bank hai, so we can't engage with you in public. We'd love to engage with you in public. We can't. Forgive us, it's an electoral this thing. And the Israelis understood it just fine. And they made no bones about it. Because, India voted for, Israel makes a difference between uh, uh, um, operational UN resolutions and non-operational UN resolutions. Just blanket condemnation of Israel, they're like, happy, yeah, India, you vote against us. The operational ones which have consequences are the ones where they tell India not to vote, and India, as a rule, does not vote for those. So, its foreign policy has changed exactly zero.
Okay, before we get the next question, I have a question for you, Abhijit. There's some controversy about how the Minister of External Affairs treated Bilawal Bhutto. Was it with reference or did he trash him? What exactly happened? There are two versions floating.
Look, Bilawal came here and misbehaved. Okay, he talked about things that he shouldn't have talked about, because this was a multilateral forum, because he needed to show that, I'm a man. He doesn't want to admit openly that he's gay, because that'll be a death sentence for him. His cousin, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who's the son of Shah Nawaz Bhutto, is openly gay, and now he claims to, well, he cross dresses as well in public. Bilawal, everybody knows, is gay. He's petrified of his father because he thinks the father is trying to kill him. He thinks the father killed the mother. Musharraf, till his last breath, used to insist the father killed the mother. He's a very screwed up child in a very, very difficult circumstance, who was completely blacklisted by the military for the last 15, 20 years, trying desperately to get traction on the ground, not succeeding, being very, very stupid very frequently. Uh, what surprised me was that Jaishankar didn't anticipate and plan for before. He gave a verbal lashing, but he could have brought about an SEO resolution prior to that to censure him. He did not. If you remember, Doval in 2018 or 2019, I think it was pre-COVID, walked out of an SEO meeting somewhere in Central Asia when a wrong map of India was put up, because these things are all decided prior, which maps will be used, etc., etc., etc. It wasn't, and he walked out. Now, when you're the host, you can't walk out of your own thing, right? So he gave him a tongue lashing, and that's fine. I mean, it's the best we could do. I think we could have also moved a formal group censure, but I don't think it would have succeeded. So he did what he could.
Next question, please. Ustad Preetuddin Khan Chanchad. Do you think the Manipur violence and the restless protests will lead to electoral reverses, including defeat for India in the Lok Sabha 2024?
Oh, boss. Wrestlers have zero constituency. Um, Punjabi farmers have a big constituency in Punjab. They have zero constituency outside of Punjab. ठीक है, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. It is what it is.
Rahul Raj wants to know. Thank you, Rahul. Can India ever catch up with Chinese economy 20 plus trillion?
Not in my lifetime, not in Shri's lifetime. I'm quite happy to say, unless the only situation in which we catch up to the Chinese economy is if the Chinese economy collapses.
Hey, Rahul, you may want to watch my hangout coming up right after this in about 30 minutes' time with Elmer Yuan. There are some very interesting numbers about their GDP and their economy size. Avdut, thank you, Avdut. Do English language require spelling reform? Does the English language require spelling reform?
Look, there is one model of doing this, which is the Académie Française. It's just on the other side of the Louvre in Paris. But there, the linguistic control, the grammatical control. English is not a language which can be controlled from one place, Abdul, because everybody has their own English. Okay, so for example, prepone and thrice. There's once, twice, three times in America and the UK and things. Nobody says thrice in America. In India, we do. Prepone is, here you will understand it. What's surprising is when I've used that word in America as an experiment, Americans, they're taken aback for a while, but they kind of get where it's going. I mean, they seem to understand prepone without having heard it before, because it's kind of a self explanatory word. So what ends up happening is it's just one of those things that and who wins? Like, do we use the American defense with an S or a British defense with a C, which I think actually makes more sense than S? Because like, if you go by the American spelling, then defense written the American way should be defenk, which is kind of a K. So you're like, I'm not a big fan of spelling reform generally. Huh? Dictation, why don't you just say SHUN? Dictation. Why? I mean, everybody gets it. Then when you do systematic spelling reforms, everybody then has to learn all the new spellings, and then it's not even standardized across the world. So what do you do?
True, true. Next question, please. Thank you, RM. What is Doron and Abhijit Iyer-Mitra? Is that some comic
No,
character?
yes, it was, see, Doron was the great, he was the common god of the Bronze Age Aryans who invaded. And he was also the father of Cyrus. And he was also, Alexander's father was called Philip Doron.
अरे यार सच तो बोलो.
क्यों?
RM, look up Netflix and search on Doron and you'll get your answer.
It's look up this serial called Fauda, yaar. The fellow looks like me. He clearly copied my hairstyle and my general deportment. So, yeah, that was it.
Next one, please. Next question, please. Venkat K wants to know. Thank you, Venkat. Is Bhagwad Gita a copy of Stoic Phil or otherwise?
Stoic philosophy is not Bhagavad Gita, Venkat. I don't know where you're getting Stoicism being Gita. Stoicism is, there's some overlap here or there, but I'm sorry, I haven't seen, there's similarity in one or two places here or there, but whatever. Oh yeah, done.
And there is Abhijit's lookalike, Doron. All right, next question, please. NN, thank you, NN. Impact of Muslim population increasing to 30%?
It's not. It's not. In fact, some of the latest figures will shock you. The Muslim community has apparently, as per some statistics, well, I don't want to talk about it because I think it'll become an issue when the actual statistics come out. But when the statistics come out, when you see the infertility rate within the community, you'll be stunned. Largely as a result of consanguinity. But when it comes out, you will be stunned if it comes out. But what you hear on what's being heard is not what's actually happening on the ground. Okay, there's lots of think about it. Why do a lot of Muslims not go to a doctor? Why do they believe that every single injection is a way of sterilizing them, not just in India but also Pakistan and Bangladesh? Kuch to reason hai na? I mean, there ain't smoke without fire. Something is happening. I really don't want to talk about it here.
Next question, please. Akash Mihir 84. What general AMCA will be? 4.5?
They claim 5, no? It's going to be stealth, twin engine, long range, medium range, really. Internal weapons carriage. So they will, it will be, I mean, there's no way it's going to be 4.5. I mean, the moment you bring in signature management, it becomes 5th gen. In shaping signature management, it becomes 5th generation, no?
Yeah. Next question, please. There are a lot of comments. That's why it's taking us a little bit of time to. Chaitanya Takle. What is the geopolitical relevance of Georgia? Why Russia created factions within them?
It's the Caucasus, very important in terms of protecting your access routes to the Middle East. Important because everything that was the USSR is important mentally to Russia in terms of a buffer zone or formerly part of its empire. They have a huge, very emotional history with Russia. Remember, Bagration was one of Russia's great commanders. You look at in War and Peace, the Bagration, the kings of Georgia, who became generals of and dukes of Russia under the princes of Russia. Knyaz, not, I think some of them became Veliki Knyaz, but mostly they were Knyaz. So princes. Stalin was Georgian. So,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Stalin was Georgian. Yeah.
So there's been a long, deep connect, and the thing is, it's a bit. Think of it like Sikhs and Hindus. Hindus want to see Sikhs as Hindus. Sikhs don't want to see themselves as Hindus. Some of them do, but most of them do not. They're like very separate religion. So there is a lot of that there. And the thing is, within Georgia, it's a normal disagreement. They're like, what are we going to gain from pissing off this huge pass sitting on our former, some view Russia as a colonial master, a lot of them do not. What is the point of pissing off Russia? Can we realistically get into NATO? And what's the point of even trying to do that when we got invaded in 2011 or 12? I don't know when the Russian-Georgian war happened, when South Ossetia and Ingushetia were occupied. And they moved into Ukraine proper. They came to Gori, where Stalin was born. They captured Stalin's house, I think, for a while. So it's normal politics plus the suffocating love of Russia and the child feeling suffocated. I mean, I'm just giving you an analogy. I'm not saying Georgia is the child of Russia or anything. I think all the Georgians will shoot me if I call them. They would actually. There are a lot of Georgians who consider themselves to be the ones who went and civilized Russia, and because Georgia is a very, very old kingdom. The Georgian text the Georgians were Zoroastrians before they became Christians and things like that. So their history of themselves is older, much older than Russia, within the same geographical area, not even moving from Kiev to Novgorod to Moscow kind of thing. So yeah.
There's an interesting movie about what happened after Stalin died. Very funny. I think I remember seeing that. Don't know if it's on Netflix or Amazon. You can take a look at that. It's very, very funny how Khrushchev ended up being on the top. Next one, please. Oh, Himak 957. Why is Switzerland so rich when it didn't have any former colonies or access to any natural resources?
Because it's always been a center for money laundering and for everybody to place their
Banker
money.
of the world.
And it always avoided wars. That early neutrality meant that we could avoid armies coming through it. So for large parts, I think the last big war that happened in Switzerland was Louis XIV's occupation of Switzerland. I don't think they've been invaded or occupied after that. Maybe during the 30 Years' War, and that would have been it. 200-300 years, when you don't have wars, when you're doing banking and things like that, you become very, very rich. They weren't always rich, but they became rich through war avoidance, through neutrality, and being very difficult to invade as well. Remember, it's extremely difficult terrain to get into. And basically laundering everybody's money. And people want to put money into you when you're peaceful. When nobody's interested in invading you, people look at it as a safe haven for gold, for tangible assets. Today, everything is, electronic assets. But in those days, it used to be gold and silver. So they come and put it there.
Next one, please. Satish wants to know, thank you, Satish. In Western secularism, let's make this the last question. Separation of church and state is like we won't interfere in each other's matters, or is it an ideal form of secularism?
No, Satish, we've discussed this several times. There is no Western form of secularism. Swedish secularism is different from British secularism. The first form of secularism, there is French laicite, which is totally different from British or Swedish secularism, which is completely different from American secularism. So please go through the previous episodes. Next.
I think we will stop here. I want to finish before
I
1
think
hour.
it's just this last question. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Chinese buildings in general suck. I'm not even a big fan of Beijing airport. There are some buildings which are very nice. I think one of the opera houses in Heilongjiang province is nice. There are occasional exceptions, but the Chinese have a very, very, very bad sense of the communist Chinese have a very bad sense of interiors and things like that. Unlike Hong Kong, which has a very exquisite sense of interiors. You look at some of Hong Kong Chinese apartment homes and the public buildings that are done to Chinese styles, they are very sophisticated. The Japanese have an interior style that is sophisticated, not on scale, but at least in small scale it works. Uh, there are some things that are not scalable, and I think uh, Chinese architecture and interiors, they're one of the main things you'll notice about Chinese things, which reminds you of the 80s in India, is that cloth that's put on all Chinese sofas. Do you know that?
Yeah.
To That's because the Chinese, like Indians, oil their hair, and they don't want the oil stains to stick permanently on the sofa fabric, so they put the white cloth there so that it sticks. They haven't evolved completely to a certain sophistication that comes with Hong Kong when it was very rich. But the Taiwanese have moved on.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, viewers. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Once again, we'll be back next Monday, same time, and we are gathering all the unanswered questions. Abhijit, at the time it's convenient for him, will answer these things, and they'll come on channel 2. Don't forget to subscribe to channel 2 also. Thank you once again, Abhijit. Namaskar.